My wife said, "Girls only trip. Trust me for once." I replied, "I trust." Then I checked our credit card statement. The thing about trust is that it's like a checking account. You can make deposits, withdrawals, and eventually, if you're not careful, you'll overdraw. Natalie had been making withdrawals for months, maybe years, and I'd been too busy playing the devoted husband to notice my balance hitting zero. "Christopher, you worry too much," she'd said, standing in our marble-tiled foyer with her designer luggage. The same luggage I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary, back when I thought expensive gifts could fill the growing distance between us. "It's just me and the girls. Spa treatments, wine tastings, you know how it is." I didn't know how it was. My idea of relaxation involved a cold beer and watching football, not spending $3,000 on a weekend getaway to some resort I couldn't pronounce. But Natalie moved in circles where $3,000 was pocket change, where wives disappeared for long weekends and husbands were expected to smile and wave goodbye. "Besides," she continued, adjusting her perfectly styled blonde hair in the hallway mirror, "when was the last time I asked for anything? I've been the perfect wife, haven't I?" Perfect. Right. If perfect meant sleeping in separate bedrooms for the past 6 months, citing my snoring as the culprit. If perfect meant conversations that felt like business meetings, all surface politeness and careful scheduling. If perfect meant a marriage that had become as cold and sterile as our granite countertops. "Of course, honey. Have fun with the girls." She kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory gesture that carried all the warmth of a handshake. Her perfume lingered after she left, something expensive and floral that probably cost more per ounce than my morning coffee. I watched through our front window as she loaded her bags into her white Mercedes. The car I'd helped her pick out, the one with the monthly payment that made my accountant wince. She looked radiant, practically glowing with excitement. When was the last time she'd looked that happy about spending time with me? The house felt different after she left. Bigger, somehow. Quieter. I wandered through rooms that showcased Natalie's impeccable taste. Everything coordinated, everything in its place, everything expensive. Our home looked like a magazine spread, beautiful but untouchable, kind of like our marriage. I settled into my home office, the one room Natalie had allowed me to decorate myself. Unlike the rest of the house, it actually felt lived in. Family photos covered one wall, pictures from happier times when Natalie's smiles reached her eyes. My desk held the usual clutter of a working man: invoices, project plans, and the laptop that kept my security business running. Mercer Security Systems had started small, just me and a van, installing basic alarm systems for local businesses. 10 years later, I employed 15 people and handled high-end home automation for the wealthiest families in our city. Smart locks, surveillance systems, automated everything. I'd built a solid business helping people protect what mattered to them. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. "Flight delayed, but finally boarding. Miss you already." Followed by a heart emoji that felt about as genuine as a $3 bill. I should have felt guilty about what I did next. A good husband would have trusted his wife, would have taken her at her word and spent the weekend catching up on paperwork or visiting my sister. But something had been nagging at me for weeks. Little things that didn't quite add up. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. New clothes that never made it into our shared closet. A distance in her eyes that went beyond our bedroom arrangement. So, I did what any man in the security business would do. I checked our credit card statement online. The charges appeared in neat, chronological order, each one a small revelation that painted a picture I didn't want to see. The airline charge looked normal enough, one ticket to Charleston, just as she'd said. But then came the others. Ocean View Resort and Spa, couples massage package, Friday $2 p.m. Couples, not group, not girls' day, couples. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold as the implications sank in. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the resort had some kind of promotional package that included couples services even for single guests. Maybe Ocean View Resort Restaurant. Romantic dinner for two, Friday, 8:30 p.m. For two. Not for Natalie and her girlfriends. For two people sharing what the restaurant clearly marketed as a romantic evening. I could picture it. Candlelight, wine, intimate conversation across a table set for lovers, not friends. My hands trembled slightly as I scrolled down to the next charge. Ocean View Resort Gift Shop. Men's Cologne. $180, Saturday, 10:15 a.m. Men's Cologne. Unless one of her girlfriends had suddenly developed some very specific shopping habits, Natalie was buying gifts for someone with distinctly masculine preferences. Someone who apparently deserved expensive cologne, the kind that cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. I screenshot each charge, my security training kicking in automatically. Document everything, preserve the evidence, build the case methodically, one piece at a time. The final charge appeared at the bottom of the list, posted just an hour ago. Ocean View Resort Room Service, Sunday 11 a.m. Continental breakfast for two. This morning. While I'd been sitting in our empty house, drinking coffee and trying to convince myself that everything was fine, my wife had been sharing breakfast with someone else. Someone important enough to warrant couples massages and romantic dinners and expensive cologne. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen until the numbers blurred together. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of building a life together, of shared dreams and joint bank accounts and a mortgage that would take another decade to pay off. 15 years, and this was how it ended, with credit card charges that told a story she thought I'd never read. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. Harold Finch, my family attorney, probably calling about the contract dispute with one of my suppliers. Harold, not a great time. Christopher, you sound terrible. Everything all right? Harold had been handling my legal affairs for 8 years, ever since I'd incorporated the business. He was old school, the kind of lawyer who still wore 3-piece suits and kept a bottle of bourbon in his desk drawer for special occasions. More importantly, he was discreet. Harold, hypothetically speaking, if someone discovered their spouse was, let's say, not where they claimed to be, what would you recommend? A long pause. Hypothetically? Very hypothetically. Well, hypothetically, I'd recommend documenting everything before taking any action. Evidence has a way of disappearing if people know you're looking for it. And Christopher? If this hypothetical situation becomes real, call me immediately. Don't do anything rash. Define rash. Anything that might compromise your position in hypothetical divorce proceedings. Be smart, not emotional. I hung up and stared at my computer screen again. The charges seemed to mock me, each one a small betrayal that added up to something much larger. Natalie would be home tomorrow evening, probably full of stories about her wonderful weekend with the girls. She'd show me pictures, carefully curated ones that supported her narrative. She'd thank me for being so understanding, so trusting. Trust me for once, she'd said. I'd trusted her. I'd also verified, and verification had revealed that my wife was a liar. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Earl Gentry, the locksmith I used for my security installations. Earl was reliable, discreet, and available on short notice, qualities that made him invaluable in my business. Earl, it's Christopher Mercer. I need you to change the locks on my house. Today. Everything okay, Chris? Security issue? You could say that. How soon can you get here? Give me 2 hours. Standard deadbolts or something more sophisticated? I looked around my office, at the pictures of my lying wife, at the evidence of her betrayal glowing on my laptop screen. Let's go with sophisticated, Earl. Very sophisticated. After I hung up, I sat in the growing afternoon shadows, planning my next moves. Natalie's flight would land tomorrow at 6 p.m. She'd expect to walk through our front door, kiss my cheek, and continue living the lie she'd constructed so carefully. But trust, like locks, could be changed. And I was very good at changing locks. Earl Gentry arrived at my house exactly 2 hours later, driving the same battered pickup truck he'd owned for 20 years. Everything about Earl suggested permanence. His weathered hands, his methodical approach to his work, his complete indifference to other people's drama. He'd seen enough domestic situations to know when not to ask questions. "Smart lock system," he said, examining my front door. "Keypad entry, smartphone app, the works. Nobody gets in without your permission. That's the idea." Earl worked with the focused efficiency of a man who'd installed thousands of locks over 4 decades. While he worked, I went through the house systematically, gathering Natalie's belongings. Not everything, I wasn't a monster, but enough to make a point. Her jewelry went into a small suitcase, the expensive kind, the pieces she'd accumulated over our marriage through gifts and her own shopping expeditions. Her favorite clothes followed, the designer outfits she wore to charity events and ladies' luncheons, the shoes that cost more than most people's rent. I packed methodically, without anger, treating it like any other project that required attention to detail. Each item told a story about the woman I'd married, the life we'd built together, the future we'd planned, or thought we'd planned. By the time Earl finished with the locks, I had 3 suitcases packed and arranged neatly on our front porch. They looked oddly formal sitting there, like luggage waiting for a taxi that might never come. "All set," Earl said, handing me the new keys and showing me how to operate the smartphone app. "You can control everything remotely, see who's trying to get in, even talk to them through the intercom system." "Perfect." Earl glanced at the suitcases, then back at me. "Chris, I've been doing this a long time, seen a lot of situations. Just remember, whatever's going on, it's better to be smart than sorry." "Thanks, Earl. Send me the bill." After he left, I stood on my porch looking at those suitcases. Tomorrow evening, Natalie would return from her romantic weekend expecting to find the same trusting husband she'd left behind. Instead, she'd find her belongings waiting for her and locks that no longer recognized her keys. I spent the rest of the evening preparing, not just practically, but mentally. Natalie was smart, articulate, and skilled at manipulation. She'd have explanations for everything, rational reasons why the credit card charges didn't mean what they obviously meant. She'd make me feel guilty for doubting her, paranoid for checking up on her, controlling for changing the locks. But I had advantages she didn't know about. My business had taught me to think systematically, to anticipate problems and prepare solutions. More importantly, I was no longer operating from a position of ignorance. I knew what she'd done. The only question was how she'd try to explain it away. My phone buzzed with another text from Natalie. "Having the most amazing time. The girls and I went shopping today. Can't wait to show you what I bought." Cologne, I thought. "You bought cologne for your boyfriend." I didn't respond. The next evening arrived with the inevitability of a court date. I'd spent the day at work trying to focus on normal business activities while my personal life imploded in slow motion. My employees noticed my distraction, but were professional enough not to comment. I'd built a good team over the years, people who understood that sometimes the boss had other things on his mind. At 6:15 p.m., I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Through the window, I watched Natalie approach the house with her luggage, moving with the confident stride of someone who belonged here. She looked refreshed, glowing, younger somehow. Her weekend away had obviously agreed with her. She reached the front door and stopped, staring at the suitcases arranged on the porch. I could see her confusion through the glass, the way her head tilted as she tried to process what she was seeing. Then she tried her key. Nothing. She tried again, jiggling the key the way people do when they think the lock is just being stubborn. When that didn't work, she rang the doorbell. I opened the door, but left the chain engaged, creating a gap just wide enough for conversation. "Christopher? What's going on? My key doesn't work." "I know." She stared at me through the gap, her blue eyes wide with what looked like genuine confusion. "What do you mean, you know? Is something wrong with the lock?" "The lock is fine, Natalie. I had it changed." "You had it? Why would you have it changed?" I held up my phone, showing her the screenshot of our credit card statement. Couples massage, romantic dinner for 2, Men's cologne from the gift shop? Want to explain how those charges fit with your girls-only weekend? The confusion disappeared from her face, replaced by something harder. You checked our credit card? You spied on me? I trusted you, just like you asked. I also verified. Verification revealed some interesting discrepancies in your story. She set down her luggage and crossed her arms. So you changed the locks? You put my things on the porch like I'm some kind of stranger? You are some kind of stranger. The woman I married wouldn't have spent the weekend with another man while lying to my face about it. This is insane, Christopher. You're being paranoid and controlling. This is exactly why I needed some space, why I needed to get away from your constant suspicion and— Stop! I held up my hand. Just stop. I have the charges, Natalie. Time-stamped, merchant-verified charges that prove you weren't with your girlfriends. You were with someone else, someone who likes expensive cologne. Her face flushed, but whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. You don't understand. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it. Make me understand how a girls-only weekend includes couples massages and romantic dinners. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in our marriage, Natalie was speechless. Here's what I understand, I continued. I understand that you lied to me. I understand that you spent our money on another man. I understand that while I was here missing you, you were sharing breakfast in bed with someone else. This morning, Natalie. This morning you were with him. Christopher, please, let me in. Let me explain properly. We can work this out. No, we can't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Your things are on the porch. I suggest you figure out where you're going to stay, because it's not here. I started to close the door, but she pressed her hand against it. Wait, you can't just throw me out. This is my house too. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to sleep tonight. Tomorrow you can call a lawyer if you want to discuss your other rights. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at her through the gap in the door. This woman I'd loved for 15 years. This stranger who'd shared romantic dinners with another man while lying to my face. I don't know, Natalie. Maybe you should call whoever bought that cologne. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. This time I did close the door, engaging all the locks Earl had installed. Through the window, I watched Natalie stand on the porch for several minutes, staring at her suitcases like they might disappear if she looked at them long enough. Finally, she pulled out her phone and made a call. I couldn't hear what she said, but her body language spoke volumes, the way she gestured with her free hand, the way she paced back and forth across the porch. She was calling in reinforcements. 20 minutes later, a black BMW pulled into my driveway. I recognized the car immediately. Bradley Kane, Natalie's old friend from high school. Bradley, the real estate developer. Bradley, the local success story. Bradley, the man who'd been circling my marriage like a vulture for years. So now I had a name to go with the cologne. Bradley got out of his car and walked up to the porch with the confident swagger of a man who'd never been denied anything he wanted. He was handsome in that artificial way that money could buy. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I watched through the window as he embraced Natalie, as she melted into his arms like she belonged there. The sight should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew who I was fighting. Bradley picked up 2 of her suitcases while Natalie grabbed the 3rd. They loaded everything into his BMW with practiced efficiency, like they'd done this before, like they'd been planning this. Before they left, Bradley walked up to my front door and knocked. I opened it again, this time without the chain. If he wanted to have this conversation, I was ready. Christopher. His voice carried the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't think there has been, Bradley. I think things are clearer now than they've been in months. Natalie told me about your concerns, About the credit card charges. I can explain those. I'm listening. He straightened his expensive tie, a gesture that screamed nervous energy despite his calm demeanor. Natalie and I are old friends. When she mentioned needing some time away, some space to think about her marriage, I offered to help. The charges you saw were just friendly support. Nothing more. Friendly support that included a couples massage? The spa packages it was just what they had available. Nothing romantic about it. I looked past him to where Natalie sat in his car, watching our conversation through the windshield. And the romantic dinner for two? Poor choice of words by the restaurant. We're friends, Christopher. That's all. And the cologne? For the first time, Bradley's composure cracked slightly. That was a thank you gift for helping her with some personal issues. Personal issues with her marriage? She's been unhappy, Christopher. Surely you've noticed. Sometimes people need perspective from someone outside the situation. I nodded slowly, as if his explanation made perfect sense. You're right, Bradley. She has been unhappy. And now I understand why. Thank you for clearing that up. He seemed surprised by my reasonable response. So we're good? No hard feelings? Oh, there are definitely hard feelings, but not the kind you're thinking about. Before he could ask what I meant, I stepped back and closed the door. Through the window, I watched him return to his car, watched them drive away together into whatever future they'd planned. I stood in my empty house, surrounded by the silence that had become so familiar over the past months. But this silence felt different. Not lonely, but peaceful. Not empty, but clean. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. I'm staying at Bradley's tonight. We need to talk tomorrow. This doesn't have to end badly. I deleted the message without responding. She was wrong about one thing. This had already ended badly. The question now was how much worse it was going to get before we were finished. Harold Finch arrived at my office the next morning, carrying a leather briefcase that had probably been expensive when my father was young. Harold believed in things that lasted: good suits, quality shoes, and legal strategies that stood up under pressure. Show me what you have, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I handed him my phone with the credit card screenshots. Harold studied each charge with the methodical attention of a man who'd spent 40 years reading between the lines of human behavior. Bradley Kane, he said finally. I know Bradley. Successful businessman, prominent in the community, married twice, divorced twice, currently single, and apparently shopping for wife number 3. What do you know about his business? Kane Development, high-end residential projects, commercial real estate, some retail investments. He's leveraged heavily, but that's normal in his industry. Why? Just gathering information. Harold leaned back in his chair, studying me with the expression he probably reserved for clients who were about to do something stupid. Christopher, I need to be clear about something. Whatever you're planning, it needs to be legal, ethical, and unlikely to damage your position in divorce proceedings. Of course. I mean it. No private investigators following them around, no hacking into his business accounts, no dramatic confrontations that end up on social media. Clean hands, clean conscience, clean divorce. I nodded, but my mind was already working through possibilities. Harold was right about keeping things legal and ethical, but he hadn't said anything about keeping them quiet. That evening, I attended the monthly Chamber of Commerce mixer at the downtown Marriott. Normally, I avoided these events. They were Natalie's territory, full of the social climbers and community leaders who formed the backbone of our city's gossip network. But tonight, I had reasons to circulate. The hotel ballroom buzzed with conversation and the clink of wine glasses. I recognized most of the faces: business owners, politicians, charity organizers, and the wealthy socialites who funded their activities. These people lived for information, trading secrets like currency and wielding gossip like weapons. I found Jennifer Walsh near the silent auction tables. Jennifer ran the society page for our local newspaper and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of who was sleeping with whom, who was getting divorced, and who was about to lose their fortune in bad investments. "Christopher Mercer," she said, air-kissing my cheek with the practiced enthusiasm of a professional networker. "Where's that gorgeous wife of yours?" "Natalie's taking some time to explore new relationships," I said carefully. "Personal growth, you know how it is." Jennifer's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. In her world, exploring new relationships was code for something much more interesting than yoga classes. How wonderful for her. Anyone we know? "I'm sure you'll hear about it soon enough. These things have a way of becoming public knowledge." I excused myself and moved through the crowd, planting similar seeds of information with other key gossips. Nothing specific, nothing actionable, just enough to get people talking and asking questions. Near the bar, I spotted Marcus Webb, a photographer who covered social events for the newspaper and various magazines. Marcus had a reputation for being in the right place at the right time, capturing candid moments that sometimes revealed more than their subjects intended. "Marcus, good to see you. I don't suppose you've been covering any resort events lately?" "Some. Why?" "Just curious. I heard the Ocean View Resort in Charleston puts on quite a show for their guests. Very intimate atmosphere." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Intimate how?" "The kind of place where people go to be seen, but only by the right people, if you know what I mean." I didn't elaborate, but I could see the wheels turning in Marcus's head. Photographers like Marcus survived by understanding the subtext of conversations, by knowing what questions to ask and when to ask them. The next morning brought the first results of my information campaign. My sister Tessa called while I was having breakfast. "Chris, what the heck is going on? I just got 3 phone calls asking if it's true that Natalie is having an affair with Bradley Kane." Tessa was 2 years younger than me and had inherited all the family's skepticism about other people's motives. She'd never particularly liked Natalie, though she'd been polite enough to keep her opinions to herself during family gatherings. "Where did you hear that?" "Jennifer Walsh called Mom. Mom called Aunt Susan. Aunt Susan called me. You know how the family phone tree works. Is it true?" "Let's just say Natalie is exploring new opportunities." "Christopher Michael Mercer, stop talking like a politician and tell me what happened." I told her about the credit card charges, about changing the locks, about Bradley picking up Natalie in her suitcases. Tessa listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. "That witch," she said finally. "I knew something was off about her. The way she talked about you at Christmas, like you were some kind of burden she had to endure." "She said that?" "Not in so many words, but the attitude was there. So what's the plan? Please tell me you have a plan that involves making them both miserable." "I'm considering my options." "Good, because Bradley Kane is a snake who thinks his money makes him untouchable. And Natalie, well, Natalie chose her side. Now she gets to live with the consequences." After I hung up with Tessa, I spent some time researching Bradley's business activities. Kane Development had several high-profile projects in development, including a luxury condominium complex that depended heavily on pre-sales to wealthy retirees. His success was built on reputation and relationships, on being seen as a trustworthy steward of other people's investments. That afternoon, Natalie called. "Christopher, we need to talk. This situation is getting out of hand." "What situation?" "People are talking, asking questions. Jennifer Walsh cornered me at the grocery store wanting to know about my new relationship status." "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was none of her business, but Chris, this is a small city. If rumors start spreading, then maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with Bradley Kane." Silence on the other end of the line. It's not what you think." "Natalie, we're past the point of explanations. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." "You're being vindictive. This isn't like you." She was right. The old Christopher would have suffered in silence, would have tried to work things out, would have accepted her explanations and pretended everything was fine. But the old Christopher had been operating under the assumption that his wife was honest. "You're right," I said. "This isn't like me. The me you knew was trusting and naive. Consider this my personal growth period." That evening, I received a call from Earl Gentry. "Chris, I've got some information you might find interesting. Remember how you asked me to keep an ear out for anything unusual?" "What did you hear?" "Bradley Kane called my shop this afternoon. Wants me to install some high-end security at his house. Rush job, premium rates. Says he needs it done by this weekend." "Security against what?" "Didn't say specifically, but he mentioned something about protecting his privacy and making sure certain people couldn't get access to his property." I thanked Earl and hung up, thinking about what Bradley's sudden interest in security might mean. Either he was paranoid, or he knew something I didn't. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Stop spreading lies about Natalie and me, or you'll regret it. BK." Bradley Kane, making threats via text message. I screenshot the message immediately, then forwarded it to Harold Finch with a note. "For the file." Harold called within minutes. "Christopher, what did you do?" "I attended a social function and made conversation." "What kind of conversation results in threatening text messages?" "The kind that hits close to home, apparently." Harold sighed. "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. But Chris, be careful. Men like Bradley Kane don't make empty threats. They have resources and connections that can make your life complicated." "So do I, Harold. So do I." After I hung up, I sat in my office thinking about resources and connections. Bradley was right about one thing. I was no longer the trusting husband who'd accepted his wife's lies without question. But he was wrong if he thought threatening me would make me back down. I picked up my phone and called Marcus Webb. "Marcus, it's Christopher Mercer. I have a proposition for you. How would you like an exclusive story about romance, betrayal, and high society scandal?" "I'm listening." "Meet me tomorrow morning. Bring your camera." The game was just beginning. Marcus Webb arrived at my office carrying enough camera equipment to stock a small photography studio. He was a thin, intense man in his 40s who'd built his reputation by being present for the moments when carefully constructed public images fell apart. "So what's the story?" he asked, setting up his equipment with practiced efficiency. "The story is about trust, betrayal, and the price of thinking you're untouchable." I handed him copies of the credit card statements, the threatening text from Bradley, and a timeline I'd constructed showing Natalie's pattern of lies over the past several months. Marcus studied everything with the focused attention of a man who understood the value of documentation. "This is good," he said finally. "But it's not enough for what you want. You need something visual, something that tells the story without requiring explanation. What did you have in mind? Public events, social gatherings, places where they think they're safe to be seen together, where their guard is down?" That weekend, Bradley and Natalie made their public debut at the annual Children's Hospital charity auction, held at the country club where Bradley was a member and Natalie had attended countless events as my wife. Marcus and I positioned ourselves strategically around the venue, documenting their interactions with telephoto lenses and careful timing. The photographs told a story that words couldn't capture. Bradley's hand on Natalie's lower back as they examined auction items, Natalie laughing at something Bradley whispered in her ear. The two of them sharing intimate glances across crowded rooms, oblivious to everything except each other. But the most damaging photograph came during the silent auction itself. Bradley bid aggressively on a weekend getaway package to a luxury resort in Savannah, driving the price up to nearly $5,000. When he won, he kissed Natalie publicly, passionately, in front of 200 of the city's most prominent citizens. Marcus captured it all. "That's your money shot," he said, showing me the image on his camera's display. No ambiguity, no room for alternative explanations. That's a man claiming his territory. Monday morning brought the consequences of their public display. My phone started ringing before 8 a.m. Christopher, it's Jennifer Walsh. I need to ask you some questions about your marriage. What kind of questions? The kind that go with photographs of your wife kissing Bradley Kane at a charity event. Are you and Natalie separated? Divorced? Getting divorced? I could hear the excitement in Jennifer's voice. This was exactly the kind of story that sold newspapers and generated website traffic. Natalie and I are no longer living together, I said carefully. She's chosen to pursue other relationships. Other relationships with Bradley Kane specifically? You'd have to ask her about the specifics. Jennifer published her story that afternoon, complete with Marcus's photographs and quotes from several charity auction attendees who'd witnessed the kiss. The headline read, "Local socialite's marriage ends as new romance blooms." By evening, the story had been picked up by the regional gossip blogs and shared across social media. Natalie's phone calls started around dinner time. "Christopher, you have to make this stop. People are calling me, texting me, asking questions I can't answer." "What questions can't you answer, Natalie?" "Whether we're divorced, whether I left you for Bradley, whether this has been going on for months." Those seem like straightforward questions with straightforward answers. It's not that simple, and you know it. This makes me look like some kind of homewrecker. You are some kind of homewrecker. You wrecked our home. I never meant for things to happen this way. Bradley and I, it just developed naturally. We have so much in common, so much shared history. Shared history of what? Planning my humiliation? No, it wasn't like that. We reconnected at Jennifer's Christmas party, started talking, became friends. The other stuff happened gradually. Jennifer's Christmas party, 6 months ago. So this hadn't been a sudden weekend fling. It had been a months-long affair that I'd been too trusting to notice. How gradually, Natalie? Silence. How long have you been lying to me? I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. You told me you were going on a girls-only weekend while you were planning a romantic getaway with your boyfriend. That's not withholding information. That's fraud. Christopher, please, can we meet somewhere and talk about this properly, away from all the gossip and publicity? No, we're past the point of private conversations. You made this public when you kissed him at the charity auction. I didn't know anyone was taking pictures. Welcome to the 21st century, Natalie. Everyone's always taking pictures. The next morning brought unexpected consequences for Bradley's business. Apparently, several of his investors had seen the newspaper story and photographs, and they weren't pleased with what they'd learned. Thomas Richardson, one of Bradley's major financial backers, called my office directly. "Christopher, this is Tom Richardson. I think we need to talk." Tom was old money wealthy, the kind of man who'd inherited his fortune and spent his life carefully protecting it. He was also notoriously conservative about both politics and personal behavior. "What can I do for you, Tom?" "I understand your wife has taken up with Bradley Kane." That's what the photographs suggest. The photographs also suggest that Bradley has been using investor funds to finance his romantic pursuits. That resort weekend, the expensive gifts, the charity auction bid. I recognize the pattern. He did the same thing during his second divorce. This was news to me. What kind of pattern? Using business accounts to pay for personal expenses, then claiming them as marketing or entertainment costs. It's not technically illegal, but it's not what investors expect when they provide capital for real estate development. What are you planning to do about it? I'm calling a meeting of the major investors for this Friday. We need to discuss whether Bradley Kane is the kind of partner we want representing our interests. After Tom hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the expanding consequences of Natalie and Bradley's romance. They'd been so focused on their own desires that they'd ignored the potential impact on everything else in their lives. My phone rang again. This time, it was Natalie, and she sounded desperate. Christopher, you have to help me. Help you with what? Bradley's investors are asking questions about his expenses. Someone told them about the resort weekend, about the credit card charges. They think he's been misusing company funds. Has he been misusing company funds? I don't know. Maybe. He pays for everything, says it's all business-related somehow. But Chris, if his investors pull out, he could lose everything. His projects, his reputation, everything he's worked for. And this is my problem. How? Because you started this. You're the one who made the credit card information public, who got the newspapers involved, who turned our private business into a public spectacle. I didn't make anything public, Natalie. You did that when you kissed him in front of 200 people. You know what I mean. You could call Tom Richardson, explain that this is just a misunderstanding, that Bradley didn't do anything wrong. But he did do something wrong. He helped destroy my marriage. Christopher, please. I know you're angry, but Bradley doesn't deserve to lose his business over this. And I didn't deserve to have my wife cheat on me, but here we are. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. I hung up and immediately called Harold Finch. Harold, I need to know everything you can find out about Bradley Kane's business practices, financial records, investor agreements, expense reports, everything. Christopher, what are you planning? I'm planning to protect myself. If Bradley's business collapses because of his relationship with my wife, I want to make sure I'm not somehow held responsible. That's actually very smart. I'll make some calls. That evening, I received another threatening text from Bradley. Your wife came to me because you couldn't make her happy. Now you're trying to destroy my business out of spite. This ends now. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Harold, then replied, My wife came to you because you offered her something I couldn't, the thrill of betraying someone who trusted her. Enjoy the consequences. He didn't respond, but 20 minutes later, Natalie called. What did you say to Bradley? He's furious, talking about lawyers and lawsuits and making you pay for what you've done. I told him the truth, that you chose betrayal over honesty, excitement over stability. If he doesn't like hearing it, maybe he shouldn't have participated in it. Christopher, you're scaring me. This isn't the man I married. You're right. The man you married was naive enough to trust you. Consider this my education. The man she'd married was gone, replaced by someone who understood that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. Someone who'd learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself was to make sure everyone else understood the price of betraying you. The game was escalating, and I was just getting started. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything seem possible. I was reviewing security proposals in my office when Harold Finch called with an update on Bradley's investor meeting. It didn't go well for him, Harold said with the satisfaction of a man who appreciated justice served efficiently. Tom Richardson and 3 other major investors are pulling their funding. Something about fiscal irresponsibility and personal conduct incompatible with fiduciary duty. What does that mean for his business? It means Bradley Kane is about to learn the difference between being wealthy and being liquid. His projects are leveraged heavily, and without investor backing, he'll have trouble meeting his obligations. And Natalie? Your wife chose an interesting time to attach herself to a sinking ship. After Harold hung up, I spent some time thinking about the mathematics of destruction. Bradley's business empire was collapsing not because of anything I'd done directly, but because his own choices had created vulnerabilities that couldn't survive public scrutiny. Natalie had traded the security of our marriage for the excitement of an affair, only to discover that excitement came with a price she hadn't anticipated. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. We need to talk. Emergency. I ignored it. An hour later, she called directly. Christopher, please. I know you're angry, but this is serious. Bradley's lost most of his investors. He might have to declare bankruptcy. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Chris, I left everything for him. My home, my marriage, my security. If he loses his business, I lose everything too. You lost everything the moment you decided to lie to me about your weekend plans. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. That doesn't mean I deserve to have my entire life destroyed. You didn't make a mistake, Natalie. You made a choice. Multiple choices, over several months. Now you get to live with the consequences. What if I left him? What if I came home and we tried to work things out? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications and possibilities I'd stopped considering days ago. It's too late for that. Why? Because of your pride? Because of your character. You showed me who you really are, Natalie. I believe you. She started crying then, the kind of desperate sobbing that might have moved me a week earlier. Now it just sounded like the noise people made when they finally understood that actions had consequences. Christopher, please, I'm begging you. I have nowhere else to go. You could try asking your girlfriends from the weekend trip. Oh wait, they don't exist. I hung up and turned off my phone. That afternoon, Marcus Webb called my office with an update on his investigation into Bradley's business practices. I've been digging into Kane Development's financial records, he said. Public documents, investor filings, property transactions. Your friend Bradley has been living way beyond his means for months. How beyond his means? The kind of beyond where he's been using investor funds as his personal checking account. Resort weekends, expensive gifts, charity auction bids. It's all been charged to various business accounts as marketing expenses and client entertainment. Is that legal? Technically, maybe. Ethically, absolutely not. And when investors find out their money has been funding Bradley's romantic pursuits instead of their real estate projects, they tend to get upset. How upset? The kind of upset that involves lawyers and fraud investigations. I thanked Marcus and hung up, thinking about the expanding circle of consequences that surrounded Bradley and Natalie's relationship. They'd been so focused on their immediate desires that they'd ignored the complex web of obligations and expectations that governed their lives. My phone rang again. This time, it was Tom Richardson. Christopher, I wanted to thank you. For what? For helping us understand what kind of man Bradley Kane really is. When we started asking questions about his expenses, we discovered some very interesting patterns. What kind of patterns? The kind that suggest he's been treating investor funds as his personal entertainment budget. We're considering legal action. Legal action for what? Fraud, misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, the usual charges when someone steals other people's money to finance their lifestyle. After Tom hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the mathematics of justice. Bradley had used other people's money to fund his affair with my wife, and now those same people were preparing to hold him accountable. There was a certain elegant symmetry to it. My office door opened, and Tessa walked in without knocking, carrying coffee and wearing the expression she reserved for family emergencies. Chris, we need to talk. About what? About the fact that Natalie called Mom this morning, crying and begging for help. What kind of help? The kind where she wants Mom to convince you to take her back. She told Mom that Bradley's business is collapsing, that she has nowhere to go, that she made a terrible mistake and just wants to come home. What did Mom say? Mom told her that she should have thought about consequences before she started sleeping with other men. Then Mom hung up. I smiled despite myself. Our mother had always been direct about matters of personal responsibility. But Chris, Tessa continued. Natalie also said something else. She said Bradley is talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else, and she's thinking about going with him. Good. They deserve each other. What if they don't leave? What if they decide to stay and fight? Bradley still has connections, still has resources. He could make things difficult for you. Let him try. Tessa studied me with the expression she'd worn since childhood when she thought I was about to do something reckless. Chris, I need you to be honest with me. How far are you planning to take this? As far as necessary. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. That evening, I was working late at the office when I heard someone trying to break into the building. The security system I'd installed sent an alert to my phone, and the cameras showed two figures attempting to force open the back door: Bradley and Natalie. I called the police, then settled back to watch the show through my security monitors. They were trying to break into my office, probably looking for something they could use as leverage: financial records, client information, anything that might give them an advantage. They were still working on the door when the police arrived. I met the officers in the parking lot and showed them the security footage. Bradley tried to explain that he was just trying to retrieve some property that belonged to Natalie, but the cameras clearly showed him attempting to force entry into a building where he had no legal right to be. "We're going to need you both to come with us," the officer said. As they were being loaded into the police car, Natalie looked at me through the window with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but something closer to fear. "This isn't over," Bradley shouted from the back seat. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is," I called back. "You just don't know it yet." The police car drove away, carrying my wife and her boyfriend to a conversation with lawyers and bail bondsmen, and the kind of legal complications that made life very expensive very quickly. I stood in the parking lot, looking up at the stars and thinking about the strange mathematics of revenge. I hadn't planned any of this. I'd simply responded to each situation as it developed, making choices based on logic rather than emotion. But the results spoke for themselves. Bradley's business was collapsing, his reputation was destroyed, and now he was facing criminal charges for attempted breaking and entering. Natalie had lost her marriage, her security, and her social standing, and now she was discovering that her new boyfriend came with legal problems she hadn't anticipated. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold Finch. "Saw the news about the arrest. Are you okay?" I typed back, "Never better." And for the first time in months, that was actually true. The storm that hit our city that Tuesday night arrived with the kind of intensity that made meteorologists excited and everyone else nervous. I was working late in my home office, listening to rain hammer against the windows and watching the news coverage of flooding and power outages across the region. Bradley and Natalie had been released on bail the previous morning, but their legal troubles were just beginning. The attempted break-in charges were the least of their problems. Tom Richardson and his fellow investors had filed a civil lawsuit alleging fraud and misappropriation of funds, and the district attorney was reportedly considering criminal charges. My phone rang around 10 p.m. Harold Finch, calling from what sounded like a very loud restaurant. "Christopher, I just heard something you need to know about." "What's that?" "I'm at dinner with some colleagues, and we overheard Bradley Kane at the next table. He's been drinking, talking loudly about his legal problems and how they're all your fault." "What exactly did he say?" "He said you've destroyed his life, ruined his business, and turned the whole city against him. He also said he's not going to let you get away with it." "Did he specify what he meant by that?" "No, but Chris, he sounded desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things." After Harold hung up, I activated my home security system and checked all the cameras and sensors. Everything showed normal, just rain and wind and the occasional flash of lightning illuminating my empty driveway. But something felt wrong. At 11:30 p.m., my security system detected movement in the backyard. I pulled up the camera feeds on my laptop and saw two figures moving through the storm, trying to stay hidden behind the landscaping Natalie had spent so much time perfecting. Bradley and Natalie attempting what appeared to be their second breaking and entering in 3 days. This time, I didn't call the police immediately. Instead, I activated the intercom system and spoke directly to them through the outdoor speakers. "Bradley, Natalie, I can see you on the cameras. You're trespassing on private property." They froze, looking around for the source of my voice. "Christopher, we just want to talk," Natalie called out, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Please, just let us explain." "You can explain from the street. You're not welcome on my property." "We're not leaving until you listen to us," Bradley shouted. "You've destroyed everything we worked for. The least you can do is hear what we have to say." I watched them through the cameras, two desperate people standing in a thunderstorm because they'd run out of better options. Part of me felt sorry for them, a very small part. "You have 30 seconds to leave my property before I call the police." Instead of leaving, they moved toward the house. I activated the motion sensor lights, flooding the backyard with illumination that made them shield their eyes and stumble across the wet grass. Then I activated the sprinkler system, adding insult to injury as they were soaked by pressurized water in addition to the rain. "Christopher, stop this!" Natalie screamed. "We just want to talk." "You wanted to talk when you were planning your romantic weekend. You wanted to talk when you were spending our money on your boyfriend. You wanted to talk when you kissed him in front of half the city. Now you want to break into my house to talk. I'm not interested in anything you have to say." Bradley tried the back door, then moved to the windows, testing each one systematically. When those didn't work, he picked up a decorative stone from Natalie's garden and approached the sliding glass door that led to our former dining room. That's when I called the police. 911, what's your emergency?" "This is Christopher Mercer at 1247 Oakwood Drive. I have 2 people attempting to break into my house. They're currently in my backyard trying to force entry through the windows. Are you in immediate danger, sir?" "I'm secure inside the house, but they're persistent. One of them is armed with a large stone and appears to be preparing to break the glass door. Units are on the way. Please stay on the line." Through the security cameras, I watched Bradley raise the stone above his head, preparing to smash the sliding door. Natalie stood beside him, her designer clothes soaked and her perfect hair plastered to her head by the rain. "Bradley, don't," she said. "This is crazy. We should just leave." "Leave and go where?" he shouted back. "My business is gone. My reputation is destroyed. My investors are suing me. All because your husband decided to play detective with a credit card statement." "He's not my husband anymore." "Then why are we here? Why are we standing in the rain trying to break into his house if you don't still care about him?" It was a good question. Why were they here? The answer came when Bradley finally smashed the sliding door, shattering the glass and setting off every alarm in my security system. As he climbed through the opening, I heard him shouting over the noise, "We're here for the evidence, the credit card records, the photographs, the financial documents, everything he's used to destroy us." So that was their plan. Break into my house, steal or destroy the evidence of their affair and Bradley's financial misconduct, then claim it had all been a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a jealous husband. Unfortunately for them, I'd anticipated this possibility. As Bradley and Natalie entered my house through the broken door, I activated the smart lock system on every interior door, trapping them in the dining room. Then I turned on every light in the house and activated the intercom system. "Welcome to my home," I said, my voice echoing through the speakers. "I'm sorry I can't greet you in person, but I'm sure you understand why I prefer to keep some distance between us." "Christopher, let us out of here," Natalie demanded. "This is kidnapping. This is trespassing. You broke into my house, remember? I'm just making sure you don't wander around unsupervised." Bradley was testing the locked doors, pulling and pushing on handles that wouldn't budge. "Open these doors, Mercer. We just want to talk." "You wanted to talk? Now you can talk. To the police, who should be arriving any moment." Through the cameras, I could see them looking around the dining room like trapped animals. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were standing in the room where Natalie and I had hosted so many dinner parties, where we'd celebrated anniversaries and holidays and all the milestones of our marriage. "You can't keep us here," Bradley said. "This is illegal detention. You're free to leave the same way you came in, through the broken glass door you used to commit breaking and entering." Red and blue lights flashed outside as the police arrived. I watched through the front windows as officers approached the house, their flashlights cutting through the storm. "Christopher," Natalie said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "Please, we're sorry. We know we made mistakes, but this has gone too far. People are getting hurt. People got hurt the moment you decided to lie to me about your weekend plans. Everything that's happened since then has just been the natural consequences of that choice. The police knocked on my front door. I deactivated the smart locks and went to meet them, leaving Bradley and Natalie in the dining room with their broken glass and their shattered plans. Mr. Mercer, we received a call about a break-in. I led the officers through the house, showing them the smashed door and the two people standing in my dining room looking like drowned cats. They broke in through the sliding door, I explained. I have everything recorded on my security system. The officers separated Bradley and Natalie, taking statements and examining the evidence. The broken glass, the security footage, the fact that they'd been arrested for attempted breaking and entering just 3 days earlier, it all painted a clear picture of escalating criminal behavior. We're going to need to arrest them, the senior officer told me. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, possibly burglary depending on what they were planning to take. As Bradley and Natalie were handcuffed and led away for the second time in a week, I stood in my broken dining room thinking about the strange journey that had brought us all to this point. It had started with a simple lie about a girls' only weekend. Now it was ending with criminal charges, financial ruin, and the complete destruction of everything Bradley and Natalie had thought they wanted. My phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. Saw the news about the arrest. Are you finally satisfied? I looked around my house. The broken door, the water damage from the rain, the shattered glass scattered across the floor where Natalie and I had once shared quiet dinners and talked about our future together. I typed back, getting there. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass, and the first hints of dawn were visible through the clouds. It was going to be a beautiful day, the kind of day when you could see clearly for miles in every direction, when everything was washed clean and the air smelled like new possibilities. I had some cleaning up to do, some repairs to make, some legal paperwork to file. But for the first time in months, I was looking forward to what came next. Justice, I'd learned, was a lot like my security systems. It worked best when you planned ahead, documented everything, and made sure all the locks were properly installed. And sometimes when people insisted on breaking in where they didn't belong, the best thing you could do was make sure they understood exactly what they'd gotten themselves into. The game was over. I'd won. Now it was time to change the locks one more time and get on with the rest of my life.